The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as the distress beacon's message played for the third time. Elder Carix, a towering Dravonian with scales that shimmered like molten silver, leaned forward on his perch, his ancient eyes fixed on the holographic display. "The human veterans," he rumbled, his voice carrying the weight of millennia. "We must send them." A chorus of objections erupted from the assembled delegates. The Threen ambassadors' tentacles writhed in agitation. "Surely not. They're civilians now. Retired. We should send our elite guard instead." Carix's tail swept across the marble floor with a sound like distant thunder. "You do not understand what sleeps in those mountains. Only humans have the particular madness required for this task." Brielle checked her pulse rifle one last time. The familiar weight of it oddly comforting in her hands after 5 years of civilian life. Beside her, Eddie adjusted his tactical visor, his weathered face creased with a slight smirk. "Just like old times, eh, Bree?" he said, his voice crackling through the calm. "Old times didn't involve dragon hatchlings and ancient alien artifacts," Brielle replied, scanning the ice-covered peaks of Dracon 7. The planet's twin suns cast long shadows across the frozen landscape, making every crevasse look like a gateway to oblivion. They weren't alone. Behind them stood 8 other human veterans, all pulled from retirement for this mission. The Galactic Council had been desperate enough to offer obscene amounts of credits, but it wasn't the money that made Brielle say yes. It was the challenge in Carix's eyes when he'd briefed them. "The Dravonian hatchlings went exploring," the Elder Dragon had explained. "They found something in the sacred mountains, something that should have remained buried. When our warriors went to retrieve them, they never returned. Neither did the second team, or the third." Now, 3 weeks later, Brielle and her team stood at the entrance to a massive cavern carved into the mountainside. The walls were covered in crystalline formations that pulsed with an eerie bioluminescence. "Movement ahead," Eddie whispered, raising his fist to signal a halt. From the shadows emerged a small Dravonian, barely the size of a large dog. The hatchling's scales were dull with fear and exhaustion. When he saw the humans, his eyes widened. You came?" the young dragon squeaked. "But you're just humans." Brielle knelt down, keeping her rifle lowered. "Hey there, little guy. We're here to get you out. What's your name?" "Zix," the hatchling said, his tail coiling nervously. "But you don't understand. The others? They found the singers. They tried to shut them down, but—" His voice caught. "Wait, don't start them. Please, you have to listen." Eddie frowned. "Start what, kid?" "The singers, the machines. Every species that's tried to interact with them gets trapped, frozen. My clutchmates, the warriors, everyone. But they said—" Zix's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "They said humans are different, that humans have a gift for breaking things that shouldn't be broken." Brielle and Eddie exchanged glances. It was a look that contained 1,000 shared memories, of impossible odds, of enemies that couldn't be beaten, of victories snatched from the jaws of certain death through sheer human stubbornness. "Lead the way," Brielle said. The chamber that held the singers was vast beyond comprehension. Crystalline machines, each the size of a building, hummed with power that made Brielle's teeth ache. And between them, frozen like statues, stood dozens of Dravonian warriors and hatchlings, their eyes open but unseeing, trapped in some kind of stasis field. "They emit a frequency," Zix explained, his voice trembling. "Every species that hears it becomes paralyzed, locked into the resonance. The Council thought Dravonians could resist because of our ancient connection to this place. They were wrong." Eddie pulled out a scanner, his brow furrowing as he studied the readouts. "These machines are synced to neural patterns. They're basically broadcasting a command that says, 'Freeze,' directly to the brain." He paused, then let out a low chuckle. "Bree, you seeing what I'm seeing?" Brielle checked her own scanner and felt a grin spreading across her face. They're calibrated for species with quantum-entangled neural structures, telepathic species. And humans? Eddie prompted. We're the only spacefaring species with completely isolated neural architecture, Brielle finished. We're literally too dumb and disconnected for this trap to work on us. Zix's jaw dropped. You mean your species' greatest weakness is your advantage here? Story of our lives, kid, Eddie said, already moving toward the closest machine. Bree, you thinking what I'm thinking? Percussive maintenance? She replied, raising her rifle. Percussive maintenance, Eddie confirmed. What happened next would become legend in Galactic Council records. The human veterans didn't try to understand the ancient machines. They didn't attempt to communicate with them or decipher their purpose. They did what humans had done to stubborn machinery since the dawn of their technological age. They hit them. Brielle's first shot took out a critical node on the nearest singer. Eddie tossed a shaped charge at another. The rest of the team spread out, identifying weak points with the kind of intuitive mechanical understanding that came from generations of fixing broken equipment in the worst possible conditions. The singers shrieked, a sound that should have paralyzed every living thing in the cavern. Instead, the humans just gritted their teeth and kept shooting. Turn down the volume, Eddie shouted, blasting another crystalline structure. Within minutes, the machines began to fail. The stasis fields flickered and died. Dravonian warriors stumbled forward, gasping, freed from their prisons. As the last singer fell silent, Carix himself strode into the chamber, having followed the team's progress. He stared at the smoking ruins of machines that had stood for millions of years, then at the grinning, somewhat singed humans, and finally at young Zix. How? The Elder Dragon rumbled. Zix's eyes were shining with something between awe and disbelief. They broke them, Elder. The humans just broke them. Brielle holstered her rifle and shrugged. Sometimes the best solution is the simplest one. Carix's laughter echoed through the chamber, a deep, booming sound that shook loose ancient ice from the ceiling. I told the council, he said, his voice rich with satisfaction. I told them only humans have the particular madness required. You don't adapt to the universe's rules. You rewrite them. Eddie clapped the Elder Dragon on his massive shoulder. That's why you pay us the big credits. As they escorted the freed Dravonians back to the surface, Zix walked close to Brielle. Can I ask you something? Shoot, kid. Why are humans always so good at destroying things? Brielle smiled, thinking of Earth's long, chaotic history. Because, Zix, before we learn to build civilizations, we learn to survive, and sometimes survival means knowing exactly which things need to be broken. Above them, Dracon 7's twin suns painted the sky in brilliant golds and crimsons. The mission was complete. The impossible had been made possible once again. Because humans, as the galaxy was slowly learning, specialized in the impossible. The end.